of words of introduction. One is welcome back to Gil. And Gil claims that he didn't have to say this. He claims that he listened to the last couple of weeks, which means everyone can feel free to test him afterwards if you want, and to see what he got. But more importantly, what we're doing today is we're going to be continuing from last week. How obvious that will be at any point. You weren't here last week, so then don't worry. This can certainly stand alone. But I'm just telling you that when I started from the very beginning, last week I'd spent the whole time really dealing with Esav and certain aspects of Esav. So today we're dealing with Yaakov. So it's just the other side of the same proverbial coin. The other thing is that at some point, everything that I'm going to talk about has this identity in more mystical sources, and I did my best to try to put this together and not get to the mystical sources, to leave those on the side. And when I do get to some of them, perhaps, and it's also the way that I got to them is, what I mean is the ones I'm accessing are ones which are far more mainstream, which means more Rashi than Zohar. I'll just put it like that, and therefore I feel that Rashi is more fair to quote in a shir like this. But everything that I am going to be quote unquote revealing it's 1% of the reveal, and there's 99% which is hiding behind it, and that 99% I'm simply, hopefully not getting into it all today, but I'm just telling you this, there is a lot more. So let us begin. Yes, absolutely, 100%. The shir is sponsored by Rabbi Michael and Jerry for the refuah shlema of their granddaughter Abigail Sarah Bat Shena Arona, who had surgery.
Emergency surgery last night, her second spinal.
Yeah, so she should have. Okay, so she should have refuah shlema. And let's then begin. Vayetze Yaakov mi Beersheva vayelech Harana. So just a little bit of background. Again, I assume that you know the story, and the story is that Yaakov, who has had a very complicated personal life, this is one of these great moments where both of his parents told him the same thing, even though they told it to him very, very differently. I mean, they both, in terms of content, they both said you should leave here and go there, although they said it differently. And I can actually ask you which one God agreed with. His mother said, run away, and right, Barach, run away. Why? Because your brother wants to kill you. And Yitzchak said, oh, why don't you go there and try to find a wife? So go there is essentially, the main point is to get over there so that you can do something there and then presumably come back fairly quickly. And his mother said, really ominously, run because your brother's going to kill you. And when he calms down, I'll let you know. That's the ominous part. And I'll let you know because she never lets him know. So that takes us to next week. So Yaakov, again, as much dysfunctionality there may have been in the home till this point, they finally tell him to do the same thing, albeit for slightly different reasons. So Yaakov runs away. So and everything I'm saying right now, I've said before, and I'm just framing this a little bit in order to get to where I want to get to today. Yaakov's journey should 100% be compared to the journey that was taken by the Eved, who we call Eliezer, when he goes on that same mission. The difference is that he packs up a traveling jewelry store with 10 camels worth of jewelry, and Yaakov goes running off because apparently he ran away, and he ran away, had no time to prepare. He didn't have time to go and pick his favorite suit, he didn't have time to pick his favorite, the engagement ring that he wanted to give, that he inherited from his grandmother, or whatever the case may be. He runs away, and he runs away with nothing. So it's this nothingness of Yaakov, which is really what I wanted to note, because Yaakov, if I'll continue, it says, "Vayifka b'makom, vayalan sham, kiva shemesh, v'yikach mevnei hamakom, vayasem miroshotav, v'yishkav b'makom ahu." So, again, what you can't miss unless you missed it. I only say this to make you feel inadequate. You know this already. And it says 3 times in this verse the word makom, and that reminds us. I say us, it has to remind all of us to the term which is used for the Beit HaMikdash in Sefer Dvarim, HaMakom Asher Yivchar Hashem. It's used many times. It's HaMakom, the place. So over here when we're told that Yaakov, he ends up by this place, which sounds total, what do you want to call it, surreptitiousness. It happens to be, why? It says, because he runs out of daylight. Means Yaakov's running as far as he can. By the way, that's a pretty good run. If you left Beersheba and you got all the way to what we think Beit El is, or any place near what we think Beit El is, that's a lot. I was just thinking about that. That's really a great deal. It means Yaakov's running. Maybe he did have a camel. Yaakov is running. He's getting out of there as quickly as possible. But again, if he really did get that far, I'm almost, whenever Chazal say, oh, there's kfitzat haderech over here, there's kfitzat haderech. There really is to get that far. But it also seems to be very deliberate that this is where he's going to suddenly run out of daylight, and this is where he's going to just go to sleep on the ground. And you realize it did not have to say makom 3 times. It could have said it 1 time, maximum even. It says he travels as far as he can. He gets to this place when the sun sets. So when I see Yaakov laying on the ground, right? So obviously his cell phone ran out of power, and he wasn't able to book a hotel beforehand, and the app wasn't working. Whatever our modern day first world problems are, and Yaakov is sleeping on the ground. Sleeping on the ground itself should trouble all of us. What's the irony? The irony is that he has a great deal of brachot that he just now took with him, and those brachot should be giving him all kinds of that should be worth an upgrade. Again, just this is all for your traveling. I have to tell you a story afterwards about upgrades. There was Yaakov is lying on the ground, which means, if something bad happened to him, if Yaakov were killed that night, we'll see right away. We're going to be told he's going to be protected. But if Yaakov were killed that night, so the initial reports in the newspaper would be that some homeless, some vagrant, a hobo was. I once heard Rav Soloveitchik give a shiur and describe the whole idea of egla arufa. So he said, "What kind of person is found? Their body is found." He goes, "It's a hobo." So I just thought it was interesting that was of all the words to use, that was the word that he used. It's a hobo on the ground and a forgotten person and so on. And if Yaakov would have been found, so then Yaakov was laying on the ground and not even covered by newspapers, and it sounds very much like a homeless person. And so there's this element of Yaakov who I'm not just going to say is the ground. It's really a low point. I would have to say it's a low point over here, running for his life, running out of sunlight, falling on the ground, and there he is. In the darkness. Then again, Yaakov, when we said that Yaakov prays at night, of course Yaakov prays at night. Why? Because Yaakov's terrified at night. I mean, that's where these prayers are coming from. They're coming out of total anxiety, total angst, total difficulty within his life. So again, I'm just taking this snapshot of Yaakov right over here. Now, if I were to go where I said I don't want to go yet, and I were to think about Yaakov a little bit more mystically, so we know that Avraham represents Chesed, and Yitzchak represents Gevura, and Yaakov represents Tiferet. And Tiferet is really the meeting point between the other two, which means Yaakov is seen as being somebody who's incredibly complete. It's the synthesis, if you want to use Hegelian terms, of if really you would say that one is a thesis and one is an antithesis, and therefore Yaakov does become the synthesis. But that there is great truth in that. That's who Yaakov is. And I think there are elements over here which point at this. And the reason why it may sound like I am perhaps overstating this, so that's why I have to keep on stating I'm not overstating this. So just let's read a little more, and this will all become a lot clearer. V'yachalom, and he dreamed. Dreaming is good, by the way, because some people can lay at night and be terrified and they can't close their eyes because there's sounds, there's movement, there's something, there are animals, and how can I close my eyes? Something may happen to me. The ability to sleep in this situation is also, again, I think is fascinating because a lot of you don't sleep at night. A lot of you have things that you're worried about, and everything in the world comes into your minds. I'm just trying to show you that I'm also married, okay? and
Don't sleep.
and he sleeps. But not only does he sleep, it's more than sleeping. He dreams. So the Gemara tells us that somebody who goes, I believe, 3 nights without dreaming, it says is a sinner. Why? Because Jews need to have dreams. Dreams mean that we believe in a future. We believe that every situation we're in right now is going to get better. So there's just something so optimistic. And it's part of what I said last week, if you recall. When there I spoke more about Yosef's dreaming. But Yosef's dreaming and everything about Yosef has its origins back in Yaakov. And the fact that Yaakov could have this dream in this situation, running for his life, sleeping on the ground, running out of daylight, and just, not knowing what's going to be the next moment, but he can close his eyes and fall asleep and dream. So now, the next point is also from the Gemara, so what is it that you dream about? So the Gemara insists that the dreams that we have are the things that are occupying our minds, the things that we're involved with, our more innermost thoughts that sometimes manifest themselves in dreams. And we're told, V'nei vayachalo, and he dreams. V'nei sulam mutzav arza, and there is, no, the word sulam is also, I've noted many times, this is the only use in the Tanakh. And we call it a ladder because I guess that's what it sounds like. Sulam mutzav arza v'rosho magia shemaima. So what is a sulam? It's something which has its feet on the ground and its head in the sky. So this is part of what I want to warn you about. The sulam is a symbol of Yaakov. Yaakov is represented by the sulam. Yaakov is a person who, even though he's lying on the ground, he has his head up in the clouds. Yaakov represents the duality. Yaakov represents the combination or the synthesis between Avraham, who, by the way, is very this world oriented in terms of the midah of chesed, of reaching out to other people. That's part of having your feet on the ground. But Yaakov is also part of the world of Yitzchak, which is Gvura, and he's a Gibor HaKovish et Yitzro, a person who has divine thoughts, which stops them from doing things which they shouldn't be doing, which means this whole identity of Yaakov, or the combination of Avraham and Yitzchak. And then again, don't misread me. I'm not saying that Avram doesn't have a monotheistic side to him, because I can't believe there would be a larger mistake that one could make. But of course Avram has the monotheistic side. Of course Avram believes in God. But the manifestation of Avram's belief in God really does come out in terms of his chesed, while Yitzchak's world is so much more a world of Gvura, Ezu Gibor HaKovish Yitzro, which is much more of I would call this a theocentric perspective, whereby God is in the center in terms of how he's relating to things. And now I'll say it again. And who exactly is Yaakov? So Yaakov is the synthesis. Yaakov is the person who has his feet on the ground, but his head is up in the clouds, which means this sulam represents Yaakov, and therefore this is what he's dreaming about. Now this is what he has to reconcile. And this is not so simple. And again, if we're not so sure about this, because Yaakov's been doing some things which are very much related to this world. I mean, just think about all the complexity in Yaakov's life. And that's going to be part of our problem, that we look at Yaakov from one scene to the next, and we're not so sure how to judge Yaakov, which means generally, if one wants to be a little cynical, sometimes even a lot cynical, then you would say that Esav is not really as bad as the Midrashim make him, and Yaakov's not really as good as the Midrashim make him. And both those sides have validity to it. And that's part of what I am really dealing with today. Because what I am trying to say is that when Yaakov does things, it's because there is this duality. And whenever you see Yaakov doing things where his feet are on the ground, realize there's also a ladder right there, which is connecting you up into the clouds as well. And there's always this other consideration. You want me to break this down and make this simpler, just in terms of last week's Parsha. Yaakov does at least two things which you can consider to be problematic. And if I were teaching last week's Parsha and I was trying to defend Yaakov, then I would point out right away, between the text and Rashi and Onkelos and Targum Yonatan ben Uziel, you'll find out that everything that Yaakov does is based upon the nevuah that Rivka received. Which is not just that he's listening to his mother, it's not just his mother loves him, his mother is the beneficiary of prophetic instruction, and therefore she tells Yaakov what it is that he needs to do, and therefore Yaakov, all the things with his feet on the ground are based upon having his head in the clouds, based upon direct nevuah. And yes, if you're wondering where I'm going today, Yes, just like last week, I tried to paint a very bad picture of Esav. This week, I want to paint a very good picture of Yaakov. Okay, so let's continue. So at least you know what it is that what I want to do and what I want to say. When we continue, not only are we told that we have a sulam, because I stopped in the middle. I stopped right there by telling you about the sulam. And the sulam itself is tremendous. Of course, the sulam itself, again, has this dual element to it of both being on the ground and connecting to the clouds. But then it continues and it says, V'nei malchei Elokim olim v'yordimbo, which, by the way, once again, is another manifestation of that same type of dynamic, which means it's the angels going up and coming down. It's this duality. And this duality is Yaakov. Yaakov is the Sulam, and Yaakov is connected to angels going up and going down. But once again, that's part of Yaakov's inner world. That's of Yaakov's dreams. That's what's occupying his thoughts. Now, just in case you think incorrectly that I'm overstating this, you really have copies of the sources for this share?
No.
Oh, okay, fine. I got
You sent them out a little bit too late last night. Some of us need to print them in the office.
Thank you, Rabbi, for working through the night yesterday and preparing the share today. You're welcome. Thank you after giving 3 2-hour lectures in university and going to the cemetery for my mother's shloshim, and then dealing with what else I had to deal with, and making dinner for my wife.
I'm sorry.
That's nice.
And then I don't want to make you feel bad. And then finding time to put this together. So no, you're welcome. Anyway, so just in case you think mistakenly that I've by the way, I did not clean up afterwards. I just want you to know there's limits to everything. She's very happy when I cook, and she's very happy with the creativity and how many things I can get dirty when I cook. It's quite impressive. Anyway, just in case you think I've overstated this, so I hope you all recognize, again, this is not an overstatement, that Yaakov's life is full of angels. Angels, they were all over the place. Absolutely more so than other characters, certainly in Bereshit, probably throughout the Torah. I mean, if you needed an example, you can skip to number 2, where in Perek Lamed Aleph, and this is the background of him knowing exactly how to negotiate with Lavan and to win over the stripes and whatever on the animals. Vayomer Elai Malach Elokim b'Chalem Yaakov Yom Hineni Vayom Esanei Necho Rei Kol Ha'atudim Ha'olim Alatzon Akudim Nekudim Uvurdim, which means there's an angel involved in all of that. And by the way, the angel identifies of Anochi Ha'el Beit El Asher Mashach Shamat Seva Asher Nadartu Sham Neder Ata Kum Tzei Min Aretz Azot V'Shuv El Eretz Moledatecha. Now I'm going to say it again. I got ahead of myself just now because the angel's saying, okay, I'm the one who revealed myself. This was that epiphany that you had, and all of your success that you just now experienced is really because of me. And by the way, what kind of success is this? This is success, which is earthly success, right? It has to do with this world. It's financial and so on. But all of that happened because of me. But again, there's an angel. The next 2 times that we have angels, and by the way, note another thing. He names the place Beit El. I'm going to come back to the significance of the El of the Beit El. And then we have in source number 2, which at the end of next week's parsha, the end of this week's parsha, leading into next week, it says, Vayom Elai Malach Elokim b'Chalom, Yaakov Yom Hineni. So again, a malach comes to Yaakov. Sorry, that was 2. Going to 3 at the end of the parsha. When it says, Vayishkem Lavan Baboker, and they separate, Vayaakov Alach L'Darkov Yifru Bo Malchei Elokim. Yaakov again bumps into his old friends. He bumps into angels. And right after he says, V'kor Shem Kol Machanayim, right? Because he says, this is a Machanai Elokim. And what happens right after the next pasuk? Vayishlach Yaakov Malachim. He sends Malachim on a mission. And here Rashi says Malachim Mamash. And a lot of people say, why does he say Malachim Mamash? Because of the pasuk right before there. Because he sees Malachei Elokim. So therefore, Yaakov sees angels. This is, by the way, it's not the only time. What's the next time? And you're going to start up with me about the next time. The next time is when he meets this anonymous person who attacks him and he wrestles with him. And of course, Rashi says it's an angel. Why does Rashi say it's an angel? Is that pshat or is it not pshat? So the only thing that you need to do is to define for me what is pshat. So what is pshat? Pshat is a contextual understanding of the Torah. And what's the question? What is the context? Right? That's the whole thing. The context over here, if you look in Sefer Hosea, that's part of the context of Torah. In source number 4, it says, "Bebeten akav et achiv, uva'ono sara et Elohim, v'yasar el malach v'yuchal bacha v'tchanen lo, Beit El yumtzaenu v'sham yudaber imanu." Which means in Sefer Hosea, which has a retrospective of Yaakov wrestling with Esav in utero. I know all of you thought that was a medrash, right? Did you know it's a pasuk? Right, Yitzritzu Abanim, it's a pasuk.
Yes.
Okay, I'm saying, but people think it's a medrash. Yeah, it's a medrash. Rashi goes, they didn't really. No, it's a pasuk right over here. But not only that, it says, who was this anonymous person who attacked him along the way? It says it was a malach, it was an angel. Which malach and so on? Okay, Yesha maladaber. But what's my point? Yaakov is constantly involved with malachim. Now, those of you who say Kriyat Shema Lamita, right? You know names of at least 4 angels, right? I hope. Well, you have to hum it now to get it right. So you know names. What do all the angels have in common in terms of their names? El. They all have the name El. And right, El, Gabriel, Michael, Uriel, Raphael. So they all have the name El. So what's interesting that this place that Yaakov struggles with the angel, that place gets called in source 3 pasuk Lamed Bet, Pnuel. The place that Yaakov sees the angels going up, back in source number 1 in pasuk Yuted, it says V'yikrat Shema Makom Beit El. Right? Because there's angels over there. But what's most interesting about all of this, of course, is that Yaakov's name itself gets changed and he becomes Yisrael. Now that should cause you to pause for a moment and ask yourself, what in the world just now happened? Okay? Because I'll say it again. That's just so much more interesting because what did I do? And I didn't say it. I didn't even say it. But what did I just now do? I gave context to the calling of Yaakov Yisrael in terms of this whole angel naming or names of angels, and you suddenly realize that the name Yisrael was not as simple as you thought. By the way, when he does get the name, what does it say in that description? If you look back at source number 3, that's 3. It says, and there's this whole thing about the name. What's your name? Pasuk Kafchet. V'yom ilav ma shemecha, v'yom Yaakov, v'yom lo Yaakov, v'yom shemecha, kim Yisrael, ki sarita im Elokim ve'amanashim v'tuchal. What's another way of saying that? Yaakov struggles with? He struggles with things down below and things up above, which means this is the same problem or the same tension or the same dynamic which takes place in terms of the ladder. This is the same thing again. That's what Yaakov is. Yaakov is this duality. Yaakov struggles with below and he struggles with above, and that's what constantly happens until finally this name emerges, this name Yisrael. So now you realize that I've gotten way ahead of myself, and I hopefully have not confused you along the way, but there is a lot more that we have to try to unpack with this. When we go back to the first source one more time, we're told that he sees these angels going up and going down. Again, the duality, the connection between heaven and earth. We're told that God appears, V'nei Hashem nitzav alav. There is tension with the word alav. Is alav the ladder or the alav is Yaakov? And I'll tell you a secret now, it doesn't make a difference because Yaakov is the ladder. Should I say that again? Yaakov is the ladder. Yaakov is the connection of heaven and earth. And there, what? Okay, good. At least someone understood. Okay. I can stop now. Okay. But I'm saying that's exactly the point. Once you understand Yaakov's duality, you understand that he is the ladder, he is the sulam. By the way, we normally say that Avraham is, right, you have Torah, Avodah, and Gemilat Chasadim. Gemilat Chasadim, right, Gemilat Chasadim is Avram. Avod is Yitzchak, he's the Korban, and who's Torah? Yaakov's Torah. Why is Yaakov Torah? So what's your answer? I don't know why Yaakov's Torah. So that's also what we have to get to. By the way, those of you who don't like gematriot, especially by Hasidic Rebbes, There are a couple of gematrias which are in the Medrash itself. One of them connects to Sulam. By the way, Sulam is always written without a Vav, which is really interesting because Yaakov is all about Vav. Because Vav is connections, connection heaven and earth. What exactly is a Sulam? It's a connection. But what is a Sulam? So it says Sulam is equal to 130, which is the same gematria as Sinai. Sinai is Sulam. Because what is Sinai? Sinai is a place that connects heaven and earth. Sinai is the place where the Torah is going to come down. And I'm going to say it again. That's not me speaking. I know it sounds like it's me speaking, but that is already something which was pointed out by the Midrash, that the Sulam and Sinai are essentially the same thing. So that's not something that you would imagine, but of course it is, because of course Sinai is where the Torah comes down, and what happens by the Beit HaMikdash, by Yerushalayim, which is what he's dreaming of, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Drash Ham Yerushalayim, which means essentially the Torah comes from Zion, but it comes from Sinai. But there again is going to be this connection between Yerushalayim, the Makom Mikdash, and ultimately between Sinai. But again, what's interesting about Yaakov is that Yaakov sees the multi-direction of this, going up and going down, going up and going down. That is Sulam, that is Sinai, and that is, what else? Well, it's a couple other things which we still have to get to, but that's Yaakov. So he says that V'nei Hashem nitzav alav vayomer ani Hashem Elokei Avraham Avicha v'Elokei Yitzchak haaretz, dealing with ground, right? Haaretz asher ata shochev alecha Aleha lecha etnenu ulezarecha. The land is yours. V'yazarecha kafar tzufratz the yama v'ked multi-directionality v'tzavona v'negva v'nifruchu b'cha kol mishpachot hama uvezarecha. V'nei anochi imach ushmarticha v'kol asher telech. Now, I'm going to say this again. I already said this quickly and you didn't hear it, right? You didn't hear it. I already commented on that word, ushmarticha. Now, when someone says, don't worry, I got your back, what should you do? You should worry. Why? Why? Because you said, I got your back, which means there's a bullseye on your back, but don't worry, I got your back. So if somebody says, don't worry, I got your back, I'll be there for you, so now you start worrying. So what happens when God says, don't worry? So now you really have to worry, because now it means you need divine protection.
Why do you have to worry when God says don't worry?
Because now you realize you need divine protection. If you didn't need divine protection, God wouldn't have to say that. I understand the other side of it. And the way that you're saying it's good, maybe even it's right, maybe even it's true, but just try to channel a little bit of thousands of years of Jewish, I would say history. What?
Protection always comes with a catch.
I was going to say Jewish paranoia, right? God says, "I'll protect you." So, oy right? No, I know it's great. It's great. Oy I need God to protect me now. So again, there's something over here.
I think if you believe that God's going to protect you all the time, that's the whole idea. And if you believe it, then you don't have to worry. But if you don't believe it, then you have to worry.
Okay, let's go back to context. Why would God say to Yaakov, "Don't worry, I'll protect you, wherever you're going"? Why? Because somebody's trying to kill him, and now he's had to run away. So God is saying, I'll protect you. So God's protecting is because he is in this incredible precarious situation, which means it's not like he's sitting at home and everything's okay. Which means it does fit into the context incredibly. But I understand.
I'm just saying that even in this context, doesn't he have? Yaakov has the conflict with himself, so he always feels guilty about doing the wrong thing. So maybe that's why God is telling him, "Don't worry, I'll protect you."
Perhaps. I'm not sure if he feels guilty or not. That actually is a great point, but I'm going to say it again. Somebody says, "Don't worry," you worry. When your kids say, "Don't worry," what's the first thing that you do? Right? If you don't worry, oh my God, now I don't have to worry. Till then I was fine. So again, I'm just noting when God says don't worry, I have a little bit of it also causes some anxiety, but what I started to tell you is that we don't understand yet what this means. There's something else going on over here which is so much beneath the surface here because we don't understand what's happening. And I still have to see a couple more sources, and then again, we'll see how far we can get. But he says, "Ushmarticha b'chol asher telech, v'ashivoticha el adama zot." Why do I have to say I'm going to bring you back? Because he's going to exile. And again, this kind of statement by God happens a number of times, and almost every time one of the avod is going to leave, we have something like this. Ki lo ezvacha ad asher im asiti et asher dibarti lach. Everything will be fulfilled. Vayikatz Yaakov mishnato, he wakes up, vayom acheni yesh Hashem b'makom hazeh, back to the makom, God is here, v'anochi lo yadati. Vayira vayom emanu ra makom hazeh, ein zakim beit elokim v'zeh shar shemayim. So he understands the place, he understands the significance. V'eshkem Yaakov b'boki, v'kach et even asher sama meroshotav, v'yasem oto matzeva, v'yitzok shemen arosha, and I'm sure someone's going to give some kind of a Chanukah Dvar Torah about this, because he uses some oil there. Good. V'yikrat shem makom hahu Beit El, which I already got to before. Why specific Beit El? Because that's what angels put in your head. V'lam Luz shem ir l'Shonah. Now Luz is an interesting place with a whole interesting history, and we'll see if we have time to get back to that. V'yider Yaakov neder leimar im yeh Elokim imadi, which is what God just said. Ushmarani. Okay, that goes back to the same point. And He will take care of me. V'derech hazer shenochi holech. V'noteni lechem lachol beged luvosh. So we're going to try to remember both about the food and about, more importantly, the beged. V'shavti b'shalom elav beit avi, v'yasham li l'elokim, v'evan azot asher samti matzeva yeh beit elokim, v'kol asher tein li aser esreinu lach. The impression that we get is that Yaakov just now said that he's going to, right? Yaakov's in distress, so okay, I'll build a shul. But what happens afterwards? He gets better. So the shul can wait. When did Yaakov actually fulfill this neder? That is a far more difficult question than there is an answer to. The easiest answer that I have, and now again I'm getting way ahead of myself, is what Chazal actually point to. And what?
And he comes back to Israel.
But he doesn't build one then. God tells him to. He keeps telling him to. So remind me that I didn't answer this yet. Just remind me. I owe you an answer. So let's continue now. There is a... Oh, I also skipped another one. Source number 5, you got another malach. Hamalach al goeloti. Okay, then again Yaakov speaks it. But again, it's referring back to the previous case. Okay,
The shul that he's talking about is not really a shul. It's really building the family and building the shvatim.
Are you a lawyer? You're trying to defend him? Come on. Come on.
Well, just like what the Shikram were, the Batim.
Yafeh? Zeh yafeh kvar, to bring... Yeah, but he didn't say that. Yeah. But still, nonetheless, I have a better answer. So give me a little bit of time. In source number 6, we have a phenomenal Gemara. This is, in Medrash Rabbah, this exists as well, but there's also 10 other explanations. This is the only one mentioned here in the Gemara. Now, where's this Gemara? This Gemara is in Chulin. What do you have in Chulin? Perek Gid Hanasha. What do you discuss in Gid Hanasha? The Gid Hanasha. So while discussing the Gid Hanasha, one of the things that you can't eat, what does it go back to? It goes back to the narrative of the Gid Hanasha. So when we get to the narrative of Gid Hanasha, so who are we talking about? We're talking about Yaakov. So then along the way, it says, oh, let me tell you something about Yaakov. And it tells us the following thing. Tana. It was taught. Olin, remember the angels are going up and going down. What are they doing? Olin umistaklin b'diokno shel mala v'yordinu mistaklin b'diokno shel mata. Okay, just stop right there for a second. What this just now said is that the angels are going up and going down, and it didn't give us that much information about what it means and what it's referring to and what it's talking about. And it goes back to the problem which I already delineated and the solution that I already told you. It sees Yaakov lying on the ground. And who is this? This homeless hobo lying on the ground, who's got no place to sleep, he's got no home, and he's running off into exile. Again, the Jewish people, all the years we spend in exile, and we're chased from place to place. And who are these people? And Christian theology says that we've been rejected by God and forgotten by God. And look at the situation that Jews live in. And the angels go down and look at him on the ground. And then what do the angels do? They go up and they look and they see something above. So now it wasn't defined, but what do they see above? They see the same thing, which means who's Yaakov? Is he connected to the ground or is he connected to heavens? And what's the answer? Yes. That Yaakov is both. Because what is Yaakov? Yaakov is the connection. Yaakov is the ladder. And I'll say it again. What we learned by the building of the Mishkan is the Vavim. The Vavim are all of the connections. What's the biggest connector in the Mishkan? The Bria Hatichon. And what did Chazal ask? Where in the world do they get such a big piece of wood? And what was the answer, if you remember?
Yaakov brought them out.
What?
Noach,
Not
No,
Yaakov. That Avraham planted the Eshel. Yaakov then cut it down, and when he went, and by the way, who provided the transportation? Who was the what's F? What do they call the trucks? The what? Who? Paro provided the transportation because Paro sent his fleet to go and bring it down. So Paro then brings it down, and Yaakov says, "No, we have to bring this." He puts it down in Goshen. All this is in the Chazal. All this is, I believe, Rashi quotes this as well, and it says that it gets. And then when it's time to build the Mishkan, what is the biggest connector there? Because Yaakov's the connector. By the way, if you really understood anything I just now said, the Briach HaTichon, which connects the entire Mishkan from one end to the other, is the same as the Sulam. But one is vertical, one is horizontal, which is actually part of the whole issue of Yaakov. Is Yaakov connected to this ground? It's also Ufratz the Yom of a Kedma, Tzfon of a Negba, but it's not just. It's also up above and below. Yaakov is somebody who goes in every single direction. But Yaakov does build the Mishkan. That's exactly the point. You like my answer better than yours. Yaakov does build the Mishkan, and Yaakov makes sure to tell his kids, no, I'm donating the central part of the Mishkan. Make sure that you bring it down with you. So I'm saying that itself becomes really interesting. But even that, I did not explain this enough, because I have to get back to this Gemara, because this Gemara is incredible. Tana Olin was taklim b'diokno shamala, v'yodin was taklim b'diokno shamata. Boy l'sakune miyad, v'nei Hashem nitzav alav. I mean, he was in danger, and God is above him, by the way. If it weren't a verse, we couldn't say it, but remember, God says, I'm going to protect you, right? God is right there protecting him. So Yaakov is homeless on the ground and sleeping on the floor, but what's happening? God is protecting him right now. God is right there above. But that first part, going up and going down, is interesting. Now, in order to understand this, I'm going to do two things. The second thing I'm going to do is read the Rashi that explains it. But that's the second thing. The first thing I'm going to do is first look at another Gemara. You know why? Because Rashi knows the other Gemara also. So let's first look at the second Gemara, and then we'll look at the Rashi. The other Gemara is in source number 7. Amr Yochanan, Ana Ishtari Mishapirei Yerushalayim. Rabbi Yochanan says, he's like one of the most beautiful people, like a remnant of the beauty of Jerusalem. And the Gemara gives you a way of trying to approximate the beauty of Yochanan. He tells you what you do exactly. You take a new silver thing and you have filled with part of the seeds of a pomegranate, and you can begin to understand what Rabbi Yochanan looked like in the beauty of Yochanan. The Gemara then continues, and it says at the end of the next line, Ahuzah means Shafur Rabbi Yochanan, right? Ini, Rabbi Yochanan is really so good looking. But weren't we taught Shufad of Kahana means Shufad Rabbi Abahu? Wasn't the beauty of Kahana his beauty of the Rabbi Abahu? And Shufad Rabbi Abahu means Shufad Yaakov. And Rabbi Abahu, his beauty was reminiscent of the beauty of Yaakov Avinu. And Shufra de Yaakov Avinu me'in Shufra de Adam Harishon. And what is it that Yaakov looked like? Yaakov looked like Adam Harishon. By the way, that is the key, that is the mafteach of understanding everything that we've seen so far and everything else that we're going to see. That somehow Yaakov is connected to Adam Harishon. And I'll add one little step now. Adam Harishon before the Chet or Adam Harishon after the Chet? And the answer is that Yaakov is reminiscent of Adam Harishon before the Chet. And that itself, you say, hold it. I don't even know what to do with that, but that is what this Gemara is saying. And that's the beauty of Yaakov is the beauty of Adam. But it's the beauty of Adam before anything else went wrong. Now, what's the problem? The problem is that Yaakov's laying on the ground, and we see this Yaakov who's connected to the ground, and what are the Malachim doing? The Malachim looking and say, hold it. He is the same thing that we saw up there. Now, what is it that they're looking at? So presumably what they're looking at is the Kisei HaKavod. And on the Kisei HaKavod, there is this image of Adam Harishon. It's the image of Adam Harishon at the apex, which is when he's created B'Tselem Elokim. So Adam is B'Tselem Elokim, and Adam is on the Kisei, and the angels don't know what to do with themselves because they've never seen somebody like Adam Harishon before the Chet, because what happens? We had a Chet. And what happens is the world became tainted. And what happens is all the static has happened. And now they go up, there's this homeless guy on the floor. By the way, now you have to have kavod for every homeless guy that you ever see. And say, there's a homeless guy on the floor and laying over there. And not only is he b'tselem Elokim, right? Sometimes you have to remind yourselves, not only is he b'tselem Elokim, but it could be that this homeless guy, Yaakov, is b'tselem Elokim in the most perfect way that there is. And they're saying, hold it a second. Now, again, I can start and try to take this and say, how is this possible? Not just Yaakov on the ground, Yaakov who takes the Bechorah, who dresses up as Esav, and does all these things that we have a reason to question him. And what is Chazal saying nonetheless? Oh, that's what you think? You got it wrong. This is like Adam Rishon before the Chet, and now you don't know what to do with yourselves. By the way, as I was thinking about this is already last Shabbos, when I started thinking about this, because I had to get past Esav, get back to Yaakov. And any of you ever read Dostoevsky's The Idiot? Yes?
My husband's reading it now.
Really? So tell him that I think is about Yaakov Avinu, who's like Adam before the Chet. It's not the one that they ask you to read in school. So good, you have an intelligent husband.
Oh, sorry, I just finished it. He's on the TVs now.
Ah, very good. But going from Dostoevsky to Dostoevsky.
Yes.
Generally only guys from Gush do it, but they only would do it, yes? Okay. I hope you're impressed with my Ruach HaKodesh, right? So, yeah. So if you don't know the story, there's a guy who escapes from gets out of a sanitarium. And in Dostoevsky's world, so I apologize, I mean, he's most likely much more of a Jesus type, of a redeemer and so on, but everyone thinks he's an idiot. Because how can there be somebody who's so pure? How can there be somebody who's so good? How can there be somebody who's so decent? How could there be somebody who's so not cynical in the world? Because there aren't people like that. So in Dostoevsky's world, there was only, meaning if there were somebody like that, we would probably lock him up and think he's an idiot. But that's exactly Yaakov Avinu. So what do we all do when we look at Yaakov? We look at Yaakov, oh, Yaakov did this wrong, does this wrong, does this wrong. Well, excuse me, let's just stop for a second. What would you do if you had interactions? What would you do if Lavan was your father-in-law? Right? Again, just think for a second. It's insanity, this total insanity. You think that the Yaakov family was dysfunctional? I mean, that family is crazy. They're all crazy. So let's just pause for a second. What if you're a Yaakov, but you have to now deal with Esav? But I'm going to say it again. Yaakov, who's doing things which are connected to this world, but where is he getting his motivation from? Or where is he getting his instructions from? They're coming from heaven. How do they come from heaven? Because he got from his mother. That's the conduit of the Nevuah coming down to his mother, which means Yaakov is this person who is this ladder. He is this connection. It's this connection of heaven and earth. And you still don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm saying, now this is what the angels are looking and saying, because the angels are thinking, no, there's this earth and there's things on this floor and there's things, again, he's laying on the ground, and then they realize, no, that guy laying on the ground is the perfection of the Avot. He's this beautiful combination of Avraham and Yitzchak, and he has to deal with both worlds, and his life is complex. It's this total complexity. It's constant in Yaakov's life at every single step of the way. There's complexity to it, but this complexity, at least now we have a name for it. The complexity is that Yaakov is the sulam, Yaakov is the ladder, Yaakov is the bridge, Yaakov is the connection. So of course Yaakov is he is the Bria Chatichon. He is the thing that goes across the entire Mishkan and holds the whole thing together. Which, by the way, the Mishkan then replaces Sinai. And what's Sinai? Sinai is the Sulam. So what is the Sulam? The Sulam is Sinai, is the Mishkan. And of course there's a Bria Chatichon, which means the Sulam goes up, it becomes the Bria Chatichon going across. Because of course these things are absolutely the same. And if you're beginning to understand me, I'd worry about all of you. Okay? So now we can read the Rashi. He's in Gush now?
No.
Who's
Trying to get one now. He's looking great.
whose shir was he in?
I'm tired of it.
Okay. So he wasn't my brother's shir.
No.
Continue. Rashi, source number 8. B'dyukno shomala partzuf adam sher ba'arba chayot b'dmut Yaakov. Did you understand what he just now said?
What number?
8. This is with the angels going up and going down. They see him below and they look above. And what do they see when they go above? Oh, he says exactly what they see. What? Yeah, so where are these Arba Chayot from? Yecheskel. And what is it within Yecheskel? It's the Merkava. This is considered to be one of the most obscure teachings in Judaism, the Maseh Merkava. And I gave you here a couple of sources in Yecheskel about what Yecheskel sees. But one of the faces of one of the sides of this revelation, of this chariot, by the way, what does the chariot do? It goes up into the air. This is a flying chariot. So what is the chariot as well? It's a sulam. It's something which connects to the ground and connects above, which means the sulam is the Merkava. So what is there is a face on it, and if you need to see this a little bit, look at Yecheskel, source number 9, Posakei, V'tocha dmut arba chayot v'zeh mar'eim dmut adam. Now, when I hear the word Adam, at least part of me would say generic person, and part of me says Adam Harishon. So now go back and read that Rashi. B'dikno shamala pertzuf Adam. There was a face of a person. Which person? Look at Rashi again, source 8. Pertzuf Adam shabar chayot b'dmut Yaakov. Yaakov was the face. Yaakov is the face which is over there, which means, no, if you say, oh wow, that means that you're beginning to understand this. And he goes, that's what the angels see. They go above and they say, that, again, that is the face on the Kisei HaKavod. But hold it a second. No, it's not real. It's not really Yaakov, it's Adam. But no, that's because that's why I showed you the other Gemara in between. Because the beauty of Yaakov is the beauty of Adam. But which Adam? Adam doesn't look like that anymore. Why doesn't Adam look like that anymore? Because Adam sinned. So now, if Esav is this total manifestation of sin, and by the way, this goes back to the pregnancy of Rivka, and Rivka's pregnancy was connected to, of course, Chava. She was the one who was told that you can have difficult pregnancies, so Rivka has a difficult pregnancy. And then you have the word Ekev was there as well, and you have the Ekev over here, grabbing onto the leg. By the way, the leg becomes much more important.
And the psychological thing of Esav that you said last week.
Yes. Hold on. Yes. That's what I'm saying. I'm continuing from last week. But then you realize that Yaakov is holding on to Esav's leg, and only when he's holding on to Esav's leg is when he's Yaakov, but he's going to become something else. Why is he Yisrael? Because he's struggling with above and below. Which means that is Yaakov. Yaakov is this duality. And as long as we think that Yaakov is only Yaakov, is when we don't understand who Yaakov is. Because there's this other side of Yaakov, which is connected to the heavens. So now I'm going to say it again. You go back to this dream that he has. Now, just in case you think that I've got carried away with all of this, right? You can think that I got carried away with all this. No. So I'm going to say it again. This is what Rashi is telling us. This is what Chazal are telling us. It's saying that something is taking place in this dream. But what did I point out right away? That Yaakov has this ongoing relationship with Malachim. They're all over the place, right? Not like Paul Simon, I see angels in the architecture. He sees angels right? He sees angels all over the place. Why? Because that's part of who he is. So now when I say that he becomes Yisrael, now you just have to pause a second and say, wow, that's so much more interesting. So now we have to try to do this a little bit better, and we'll see how much time. We don't have a lot of time, and we'll see how far we can get with this. In Yecheskel as well, if you look at the first chapter, you have Dmut Adam, and then there's also in Pasuk Zayin, V'kaf ragleim kekaf regel. Did you notice that language anyplace else? Yaakov's regel, the kaf regel got hurt when he wrestled, which is interesting, because here it's the kaf egel, and there it's the kaf of Yaakov, and that's where the Gid Hanasha comes from. Al Kahn, and that's where Yisrael is used. Yisrael should not be eating from the Gid Hanasha. Okay, it's next week's parsha, but hold on, again, still, oh, look at that, I didn't give source 9.5 a number. So it says again, in source 9, Pasuk Yud, Udmut pnei pnei Adam pnei Aryeh, pnei Shor, and pnei Nesher. Can you keep track of all four? Pnei Adam pnei Aryeh, pnei Shor, pnei Nesher. Later on in source number 10, it starts talking about the Kruvim, right? The Kruvim and the Kruvim and the Kruvim and so on. And then finally, Pasuk Vidal, V'abrapanim lachad, pnei ha'echad, pnei ha'kruv, pnei ha'sheni, pnei Adam, v'ha'sheni, pnei Aryeh. So what's missing? What's missing is the shore. So the Gemara, which is someplace between 9 and 10, it says that he prayed, Amar Ish Lakish, It turns the shore into a kruv. And it says, why was he so troubled with the shore? Because the shore is connected to the chet ha'egel. So now I just have to pause for a second. Because I know that I lost you, and I know you have no idea what I'm talking about. And let's try one or two more steps, and then I'll try to make a little more sense. In source number 11, which you think is not connected to anything, it says that Yaakov comes in dressed as Esav, v'yigash v'yishaklo, v'yirach et reach bigadav. By the way, we just went back to the clothing, right? Yaakov prays that he has clothing, and he smells the clothing, and he blesses him. It's like that field that was blessed. Now, what is the sadeh asher barach Hashem? Rashi writes in source 12, he says, Reach Gan Eden. So now we just got back to Gan Eden. By the way, if that's not good enough, in the next line he says, it's like the field that was blessed by God. That is the field of apples. Now, what in the world is the field of apples? Answer is that this is a major theme in Kabbalistic sources, and Rashi knows of what he speaks over here. By the way, incidentally, this has nothing to do with Adam eating from an apple, because that's the Eitz Hadat Tov Ra, and that's probably, they claim that it's based upon a misinterpretation of Latin, and if you need, you'll look it up, you don't need me. I don't need to give you misinformation. But Rashi's not talking about the Eitz Hadat, he's talking about the Eitz HaChaim. That's the one which is blessed. That's the blessing from Eden, is the Eitz HaChaim. So somehow Yaakov's connected to Eitz HaChaim. But of course Yaakov's connected to Eitz HaChaim. Why is Yaakov connected to HaChaim? Because Eitz HaChaim is Torah. Eitz HaChaim l'machzikim ba. And who's Yaakov? Yaakov is Torah. What is Torah? Torah is the Eitz HaChaim. So of course Yaakov's connecting to it. So now take a deep breath, because we have to look at something else. In source 14, it says, "V'yigaresh et Adam v'yishkei mikedem l'gan Eden et hakruvim v'etlat hacherev v'mitapechet l'shmor derech Eitz HaChaim." So what's there to protect the way from people from getting, or from Adam from getting to the Eitz HaChaim? What do you have? You have the kruvim. So here's where the kruvim present themselves for the first time. Of course, later the kruvim are going to be in the Mishkan, but here you have the kruvim. Source 15, which is far more important than I let on, even though I hinted at it, but you didn't hear the hint. The job of Adam in Eden was la'ovda, to work, u'l'shamra. Ovda sounds like mitzvot aseh, l'shamra sounds like mitzvot lo taseh, to do things. So now, what is Yaakov going to be doing in his whole sojourn here when he's together in the house of Lavan? He's going to oved, right? He's going to work, and 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 years upon years he's going to work. And what does God say to him? Don't worry, I will guard you. Shmarticha, I'm going to take care of you. Which means, how did Adam fail in the Garden of Eden? I don't know if he worked or if he didn't work, but I do know that he did not protect what he was supposed to protect. What was supposed to be protected? L'shomra, nobody's supposed to go near that tree. Not supposed to eat from the tree. Which means Adam breaks the negative commandment. That means the shmirah is what gets broken. So it's interesting that here in this post-Eden world, God says, okay, let's divide this up this time. You messed up the shmirah last time, I'll take care of the shmirah. By the way, how do you work? So you go back to the shore now. What is the shore? It's a beast of burden. What do you use the shore for? You use it to work the ground. Adam's jar was la'ovda. But what's the problem? We end up, instead of doing what we're supposed to do, our avodah becomes avodah zarah. By the way, that is exactly what happens right after Sinai with the egel, where we worship an egel. So instead of using something which is designed for avodah, it ends up becoming avodah zarah. And that's exactly where the egel fits into it. The egel then the shore is one of these four faces, because it's supposed to work in Eden. You're supposed to use the shore, you're supposed to use the power of the shore, la'ovdah. But what happens instead? It becomes avodah zarah. And that's exactly what the Gemara referred to over there in Chagiga. So he prays and it gets turned into a kruv. Why does it get turned into a kruv? Because the kruv becomes the replacement for Adam, l'shmor derech, right? Now he guards the place to the other tree, and he guards to the place to the Eitz Chaim. It becomes a kruv. But a kruv, so can we now just go in step? You have man who's supposed to work in Eden, gets replaced by the kruv. A man gets replaced by an angel. And then what happens? But then the angel, the kruv, gets replaced by Yaakov. Because what exactly is a kruv as opposed to an Adam? A kruv is a younger, this is all the Gemara. A kruv is a younger person, it's like a baby. And what does a baby have? Total innocence. How do you say innocence in Hebrew?
Tam.
Tmimut. What is Yaakov? Yaakov ish tam. By the way, what is a shor who is innocent? A shor tam. What do you call a shor who's guilty? A shor muad. So therefore, a shor tam was supposed to be there. The shor tam ends up getting replaced, and what do you have instead? At that point, again, you have this egel, avodah zarah. It's no longer tam, it's muad. There's nothing more muad than an egel. But then what happens? We have a prayer that Yechezkel makes, and that disappears, and the kruv comes, because the kruv ultimately is what gets replaced. But now, what is Yaakov's job going to be? Yaakov's job is to do the avodah. Therefore, Yaakov at this point becomes Yisrael. Because at this point, Yaakov is going to end up doing this work that Adam Arishon was supposed to be doing before the sin. Which means this whole element over here of Yaakov being part of that world or this world, we look at Yaakov, and if you want to look at Yaakov in a negative way, it's very, very easy. You just look at all the things that he does. And you say, well, look at Yaakov. And I'll say it again. That means that you misunderstood Yaakov, because Yaakov is an ish tam. Yaakov is an ish tam. Therefore, Yaakov can take over for the kruv. Why do we say Yaakov Avinu lo mate? Because what's mate? Mate is the inverse of tam. If you're not tam, that's what. And what happens in the Garden of Eden when they sin from the tree? They bring death into the world. But what's Yaakov? Yaakov Avinu lo mate. Yaakov Avinu becomes the opposite, and he's connected to Adam, hopefully you get this finally, before the Chet. So Adam before the Chet is somebody where there's no death there. And of course you're going to tell me, but there is death in the world and so on. But no, Yaakov is connected to eternity, which means Am Yisrael is connected to eternity. Am Yisrael is connected, we're B'nai Yaakov, we're B'nai Yisrael, which means that this role that Yaakov has, and I'll say it again from the beginning, it's very easy to look at Yaakov in a negative way and say, look at all the problematic, look at all the questionable things. And maybe, you know what, I'm going to read one last source for today, because it's too good to skip, even though I'm skipping lots of good sources. I want to look at the Meshech Chachman, source number 18. It's in the middle of Bamidbar Parshat Shlach. Where by Parshat Shlach, we're dealing with the Tchelet. We're dealing with Parshat Tzitzis. By the way, where was the Tchelet made, according to the Gemara? In Luz. Where's Luz? Luz is Beit El, which means, and what else does the Gemara say about a city called Luz? It says in Luz was a city that no one ever died. Why? Because this is all connects back to Yaakov. So now the Meshech Chachma is going to be so difficult. Let's read, let's try. Kol mitzvat Hashem, right? You do the tzitzit, you remember all the mitzvot. Gematria Taryab, 612. Umitzvot tzitzit hare Taryag. Uri'item oto ki tchelet hu hamimazeg hatzvaim kiadua. Blue is a combination of all kinds of different colors, as is well known. V'zeh habriach hatichon, and that is the connection which goes across the Mishkan. That is the briach hatichon. And he quotes the Zohar in the Hakdama. And that's Yaakov who's up on the ladder. You realize what he just now did. He just now did what I told you before, that the Briach HaTichon is the Sulam, is Yaakov. That's the same thing. Because what all this is the Sulam. And that, as it says in Yechezkel, Kimara Evan Sapir Dmutakisei, and that itself is the Merkava. By the way, can I go back again now? And how exactly did the Briach HaTichon make it back down to Egypt? In the Agalot, which is essentially is the Merkava. That's what. Okay, just 1 second. The Agalah. Right? And as soon as Yaakov sees the Agalot which is sent, he goes, oh, the last thing we learned was Egla Rufa. What is Egla Rufa? Egla Rufa is when there's a homeless person who dies along the way. Which is, okay, that could have been Yosef. It also could have been Yaakov. So now you realize there is this double connection when he sees the Agalot in terms of triggering in his mind what this is all about. And this homeless person that you think is connected to the ground and is just like, again, this hobo may actually have a connection to something which is taking place far above. And this is the tzitzit of God. Yaakov, and that's the beauty of Yaakov. Be'in shufr de Adam Arishon, which is the beauty of Adam. V'hadvarim amukim liyodechein v'havein. And the things are extremely difficult and complicated to those who understand mystical ideas and understand. You know what? I think I explained every single word in this Meshech Chachma just now, which if you would have read this before I started, you would have looked at me like I'm out of my mind and say, what in the world is he talking about? But he just now took everything that we saw, which means it is the sulam, is the connector between heaven and earth. When you put on the chelet and you see this, and you see the sea, and you see the sky, and you see kisei hakavod, that's the connection between heaven and earth. When you see, it is the sulam, and it is the merkava, and the merkava represents the Beit HaMikdash Shamala, which means even though you can see perhaps a Mishkan Lamata, it connects the Beit Mishmala, and that is the Merkava. And therefore, so of course, when you have Yecheskel describe the Merkava, and there's a face of a person, so which person in this? So you say, it's Adam. No. It was Adam. It's Yaakov. That's Yaakov. And what is my point with all of this? And it's all theology slashing on mysticism. What's my point? My point is once you understand Yaakov in this way, you understand that everything that Yaakov does that looks like it's pedestrian, that looks like it's problematic, that Yaakov is coming from above, Yaakov is coming with a nevuah, and I love the partnership. Okay, Adam Arishon messed up the first time around, Avdalu Shomra. You messed up the Shomra. What does God say? Okay, I got the Shmirah. I'll take care of that, what you messed up. You take care of the avodah. Yalla, let's go and do it. Go do the avodah you need to do. And Yaakov's role is to bring about this total tikkun within the world. And that is the foundation of OUisrael. And who are we as a people? We're a people who have our feet on the ground and our heads in the clouds. That's who we are. Every single decision we make is a combination of these two, and we live in two worlds. We don't live just in this world, and we don't live just in that world. We are the bridge, because we are Bnei Yisrael in the most literal sense, and people can look at us and always try to judge us, and that's where all the anti-Semitism comes from, because they don't understand who we are. We are these people, and that's why I said it again. That's what Yaakov dreams about. That's what Yaakov thinks about. That's who Yaakov is. Yaakov sees angels. Yaakov becomes Yisrael, and it's the same thing, because he struggles with man, he struggles with God. Yaakov struggles with the duality, and Yaakov is the connection between the two worlds, and that is what our mandate is. And I hope that after everything that I've said, if you see something which is somewhat problematic with Yaakov, my first advice is, Dan l'kaf, give him the benefit of the doubt. Why? Because this is Yaakov Avinu, and this is Yisrael.